We need it. Oxygen. It's why we breathe.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Small Business Stories. You've got me, your host, Dr. LL, and we've got our guest this week, Jeff Greenfield from Provalytics. Pardon me, let's try that again. Provalytics, there we got it, from Boston, Massachusetts. Hey, hello, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing great, Laurel. Pleasure to be here today with you.
It's so funny that I choked on an analytics word where I've spent most of my life in analytics, bioinformatics, data science, all of this sort of things. It's all about analytics. I choked on it. Before we get into all the stuff, how did Provalytics come to be as a name? Because I think that's always a fun question.
That's a great question. My wife and I were in Carmel, California. It was about 3 years ago. And I said, I think I'm going to jump back into this business of analytics again. And, I've been in the digital space for a long time. And so I had to find a .com. And so we started looking around, and I like being able to take words from other languages and bring them over. And prova means proof in Italian. So I was like, oh, this concept of proof, because that's really what it's all about, is people want to be able to prove, hey, if I do this, I'm going to get that. So then we added the kind of the analytics to the end of it, and that's how Provalytics came about.
Perfect. And easy actually to say, despite my blah, 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 not enough coffee. That's well, I'll blame it on the lack of caffeine. Let's let's also hit something that you just said. You really wanted a .com domain, and I'm speaking to you as a steeris.io, an IO domain. Why was the .com domain so important to you?
Well, I think coms, they've been around since the beginning. They were essentially like the original domains, and it still carries a level of, I don't know, of certainty with it, of proof behind it. It's kind of like, most nonprofits are .orgs, and so that .com aspect of it. You're starting to see more and more .ios, .ai is taking off right now with the growth of AI, but I'm kind of an old timer in the digital age since the from the mid 90s. And so to me, it's got to be a .com.
See, I went down that route. So 5 years ago, when I started Steeris, the .com was taken. I thought, oh, well, that's fine. We're an IT company, so .io is perfect. I didn't want to go down .ai, which was a path to us, even though we were going to use AI, because at that time people were nudgy about it. And then I thought, about a year into it, somebody approached me and said, hey, Laurelyn, would you like to buy the Steeris.com domain? It's only $57,000. And I went, thanks, we're an IO.
Yeah, well, that's probably a good reason why I went the .com route first.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, we have folks in our audience base who are listeners only. They've only got the auditory experience because they're coming in through whatever channel is being streamed on, might be iHeartRadio, might be Spotify, whatever it is, Amazon. But we like to give people a sense for who people are because if they don't have the visual experience. So, Jeff Greenfield, describe yourself, describe your room. What are people listening to? Where are you at today?
Well, I'm actually at home. I've been working from home. In fact, most of my professional life, I've worked in and out of the home. I like it. It works good for me. I have a space here, a nice large office. It was a bedroom when we bought this house, and I converted it over to an office. And it's kind of like my sanctuary where I close the door and no one will bother me for. I could probably stay up here for 3 days and no one would bother me, to be honest. But it's a nice spot, and I'm actually, as I'm looking at the screen right behind me, is kind of like a nature preserve. I see deer and hawk that kind of go by throughout the day. So it doesn't feel like a typical work environment. And it works great for me.
Very conducive to being innovative, creative, and just at peace, right, with what you do.
Right.
I love
Exactly.
it. So thanks for sharing that. What are you, Jeff? Not your business, not Provalytics. What are you, Jeff, really, really good at?
I'm really good at taking an idea and coming up with it and producing it and bringing it to market. That's what I'm really good at. Taking something that is a spawn of creativity and turning it into something that's useful, in particular for marketers. And I enjoy that. I find that to be a very creative, enjoyable process. It's a lot of fun for me. There's a lot of uncertainties in that, and that seems to kind of get me excited, that uncertainty, that kind of day to day where you're bobbing and weaving. Sometimes it feels like a boxing match. Other times it feels like a roller coaster, but I love it. It's what I've done all throughout my career, and I'm good at growing businesses up to a certain point, and to a certain level of team, and that's what I'm best at.
It's great. You can see how that's a great fit as an entrepreneur because a lot of the young folks that I talk to who are thinking about embracing entrepreneurship, many right out of high school and just foregoing the whole college route and just going straight into it. Hey, I'm going to be an influencer, a freelancer, a gigger, a this, a that, or I'm going to create a company. I've got this idea. What most folks, in my experience, what I've seen, and I want you to react to this, is that they're not prepared for that roller coaster and that boxing match where it's constantly a battle of wills, a battle of economics, a battle of raging infernos where everything's on fire every day, all the time. React to that.
Yeah, I think we have a generation of younger people these days who grew up being told that it's not their fault when something bad happens and that don't worry about it. Mom and dad will fix it. I felt this myself because when I grew one of my former businesses and I would let go of some of these younger folks who were now at that age where they're becoming entrepreneurs, when I would let someone go, I would hear from their parents. And their parents would try to convince me to keep their child working there and stuff. And their child wasn't a child, their child was in their early 20s. So I think we have a generation, whereas I grew up at a time where if it was my fault, I had to figure out how to fix it. And so I think it just depends upon the rigors. And I think there's something to be said about teaching your kids that when they run into a problem, that they need to be able to look at that problem because typically problems involve other people. They always involve communication issues. And then playing it back in their head to figure out where was the point that they engaged and where could they have stopped and moved and gotten out of the way. And I think that's really important. The hardest thing I think for entrepreneurs is that we tend to be very positive. We tend to not look at the negative. We tend to like just look above everything as opposed to really dive into the nitty gritty. And that's always the toughest thing. But yeah, I mean, the life of an entrepreneur is the absolute best, but it has its ups and lots of downs, and without a doubt. And some people are just not made for it. Some people are made for a job, where there's that certainty. But I think folks today are learning that there's less certainty in a job than there ever was. It's a whole different world these days, and that maybe being an entrepreneur is worth it because you realize that you just have to rely on yourself. Whereas at the job, you have to rely on the job as well as yourself.
And that's so true. Even government jobs, which people thought, oh, that's just about, sacred, right? That you're not going to be let go. There's tons of uncertainty there. And I want to roll it back to what you said about the parental involvement. I was at a conference a couple of months ago speaking at the Society for Human Resource Management, SHRM, which is the global authority on all things HR. And the CEO of SHRM was presenting a bunch of stats that they had from a 2024 study in new hiring patterns, trends, this, that, all these kinds of things. And there were a couple of things that stood out in that report. But one of the things was that 22%, so just over 1 in 5 Gen Z folks brings a parent to the interview. Right. So
Yep.
now you, as the leader, you're interviewing the parent and not the youth. And so you don't really get a chance to know. So that's one thing. And then the other thing I was going to comment on this whole participation trophies. Yeah, thanks for coming out. You try it out here. Like, no, you've got to learn it, right? It's through the school of hard knocks, the failures, this, that. It's all about the fall down 7 times, but get up 8.
That's exactly right. And some weeks you move forward 5 steps and you fall back 4. So you're ahead 1. And some weeks you move forward 5 and you fall back 25. I mean, that's just the fact of being an entrepreneur. But you get to understand that, you're doing this yourself, or you're doing this with yourself in a team or a partner or a friend. And it's it's very creative, and you're able to live the vision that you're able to put out there versus a job where you're living under someone else's vision, else's set of rules. And like I said, for some people, that's what they need. For me, I've had one job my entire life, which I took at 55, in between exiting one of my companies. I had a friend that had a very large company that was going to be sold or IPO'd, and he needed a new division built. And he asked me to come on board. And we spoke for like 6 months before I did it. And my wife said, why don't you try it? See what it's like. You've always sold into teams. You've never been on the inside. And it was eye-opening for me. I was shocked at what I learned about what actually goes on in the corporate world. It was everything I thought, but to actually experience it was just incredible.
Ooh. And I want to dig into what you said, because I believe this is really the essence of analytics. You made a statement just a few moments ago that as entrepreneurs, we tend to be, right? We have to be the energizer bunnies and the optimists, like, oh, the sun will come out tomorrow, right? Because you have to believe, right, in what you're doing. And okay, today was a tough day. Tomorrow's not going to be as tough. I'm going to bed with that hope, right? But we, and collectively, the big we, says the self-qualified ADHD squirrel, that we do tend to gloss over a lot of the details, because most entrepreneurs are A, visionary. We recognize a problem and we go and try to solve it. B, over 50% of us self-identify as having ADHD or ADHD-like behaviors. And C, we're so focused on trying to make the thing happen that we overlook oh yeah, oh, we're hemorrhaging finances again. Oh, our month out, the outcome isn't what we thought with the forecast. Oh, well, let's borrow some more money. Let's take some more out of our 401k. Let's get some more investors. Let's get going, right? Because we have this thing to solve. And is that where Provalytics comes in and says, oh, wait a minute. Let's look at the numbers here. What are we doing?
Well, Provalytics is more along the line of this old adage that a marketer came up with many years ago, which is half the money I spend in marketing is wasted. The only problem is I don't know which half. So what's interesting about entrepreneurs is that you're right. We tend to be very one-sided in our viewpoint of things. But when it comes to marketing, we want to be data driven. We want to be numbers driven. And the problem is that once digital marketing grew to the point of where it is now, there's literally hundreds of thousands of millions of combinations of ads every single month. And it is literally impossible for any person, even with a spreadsheet, to figure out what's working and what's not working. I'll give you a great example. You're running ads. Let's say you're selling this really cool, you're an entrepreneur and you created this newfangled cool garden hose that doesn't leak. I mean, there is no such thing, but let's just say you did, and it's
We can
awesome.
pretend.
Yeah. And so you're running ads like a video ad on Meta on Facebook, and somebody scrolls by it and they see it, but they don't click on it or do anything. And then since they scrolled by it and maybe they hesitated for a minute, now when they're on Instagram, which is part of Meta, now they see like the video and they actually hover over the video. They watch it for like 10 or 15 seconds and they say to themselves mentally, hey, that's really cool. I got to get that hose. And then they go on with their life like most people do. And then, now it's like, a couple days later, it's a weekend. They go to turn their hose on and their hose leaks. And they're like, oh my God, I got to get that hose. They take their phone out, they Google the name of the hose, and they click on the first thing they see, which is your ad in Google, and they buy. So multiply that times a couple of thousand times at the end of the month. And what a data-driven marketer is going to see in their analytics is that my ads on Google are working incredibly well. Meta sucks. I'm going to cut Meta. I'm not going to spend there. But what we now know is that Meta is what built the awareness, got them to engage, and got them to the point where it left an impression in their brain to where they wanted to buy. And then when they went to buy, they just navigated through Google. And that's just a very simple example of where being data driven as a marketer and an entrepreneur and following the numbers that are laid out through a Google Analytics can actually lead you down the wrong path. And it's not just entrepreneurs or small business owners. I see this every day at some of the largest marketing organizations, and folks that are spending over $1 million a day are also going down this path as well. It's very confusing because you want to believe in Google, but trusting Google is like asking a fox to guard the hen house, and that's part of the problem there. So what we do is that we come in utilizing our analytics that is independent, that uses AI and machine learning, that kind of looks at, we kind of pan the camera back to look at the big picture. We start from there, and then we're able to drill into the details so that you can actually see the impact that Facebook and Instagram and Meta is having on that Google sale, or how CTV is lifting your retargeting and so on and so forth, so that that missing half, that half that is wasted, we're able to tell you where it's wasted at, and then also tell you how to reallocate it so you can take the same budget and get more sales out of that same budget. And that's really the key.
And isn't that though? I mean, it's all about using our money effectively. I've had so many folks on here who are experts in digital marketing, who are entrepreneurs leveraging digital marketing to grow their businesses and doing everything from advertising on TikTok Shop to Google Ads to this to that. And the consensus is always the ads don't work. You have to spend so much money to get there. Everyone is really having a hard time with finding the right vehicle to get noticed because the ads have become extremely expensive, regardless of which platform you're on. There's so many technology ad blockers now that you can just easily scroll past and see we're so saturated, right? Like there's so much noise. What's a business owner to do, Jeff? What do we do? How do we get
Well,
noticed?
well, you're right about the fact that there's a lot of noise, but advertising does work, and it works really, really well. I think the biggest problem for marketers and entrepreneurs to understand is that the folks that control most of the digital advertising, the majority of it, are Meta, and which is Facebook, and Google. And then there's other companies out there like Criteo and the Trade Desk. Now you've got Walmart and Amazon. And the one thing that all these companies have in common is that they're publicly traded. And what I mean by that is that unlike a private company, they face significant pressure every quarter in terms of their earnings. And so as a result, what ends up happening is that if all of a sudden you start getting the right combination, because it's really about that mix. It's not about how much you spend, it's about being able to find the mix that works, the combination of the messaging and being out there, and then being able to scale it. Because the reality is most marketers who are selling stuff, they're like, hey, if my number is this, if I get this return with every dollar, I could spend $20 million a day. It wouldn't matter. So the key is to be able to experiment enough to find that mix. But what ends up happening is that when you find the right mix and you're rolling along, and you're 3 months in and you're killing it, you're still scaling it, and now you're at month 6. This is my rule of thumb since the 90s and the world of the internet. When you're at month 6 and you are doing something that's working, even if it's SEO, even if it's non-paid, you are on borrowed time, because these companies have to change things in order to increase their earnings. And so as a result, as an entrepreneur these days, not only do you have to be managing how you're spending the dollars, but you also have to be looking around the corner to figure out, what should I be testing? Because I need to replace this when it dies with something else. And not everybody wants to hear that, but that's the reality. Nobody has something that keeps working forever. This is a very fast moving, dynamic world. We can just see now the impact that AI has had just in the whole SEO world. So traffic has dropped down dramatically for lots of publishers. So this is you as an entrepreneur, you have to always be learning and testing new techniques so you can continue to have your new customer machine rolling along.
On the subject of change, let's talk about cookies because digital advertising has relied heavily on cookies for a long time, right? You clicked, we got you, we know your IP address, we know the kinds of things you like. We can stitch together the little story. Laurelyn likes things about dogs, this, that, whatever, and everything else. And then all of the organizations who raise money for dog rescue start targeting me, right? And but let's talk about cookies going away and the impact that that is having or might have soon on business as we know it with respect to digital marketing and outreach.
Yeah, so since COVID, there's been this significant shift towards privacy across the entire advertising ecosystem. It first started with the big iOS update. We all noticed it. Those that have Apple phones, when it did an update and you went to log into Facebook or something, it asked you, do you want this app to track you? And of course, everyone said no. And that's based on this concept of GDPR and the EU that says that, hey, you need to have people opt in. Because it used to be on the internet is that you could just collect a list and people could get out if they wanted to. But now everyone's saying, okay, well, now people have to opt in. You start from ground zero. And what we found is people didn't opt in into that app tracking. So that kind of blinded Facebook and Meta and a lot of these apps to what was going on and limited their ability to see what was working and limited their ability to track you. The other thing is that in Safari mobile, cookies have not worked for a long time. In Safari, they haven't worked for a long time. Firefox, the only place where there's still cookies is in Chrome. And they were going to go away, and then they said they weren't. Then they were going to go away, and then they said they weren't. Now they say they're going to stay. But what's happened is during this like 5 years of back and forth, the other thing that's occurred is that all of these systems have come up that we call walled gardens. And what I mean by that is that it's a garden, if you will, that's got walls around it where it doesn't share information with other folks. So you can't track from one place to another. A great example of that is Facebook. So Facebook knows everything there is to know about all the users because we give them information. So marketers can go there and say, I want to target these types of people. And then they say, I think some of my Facebook people are then going to Amazon. I'd like to target those Facebook people over in Amazon. And Facebook says, no, you can't take that data with you. And then you go to Amazon, you target people there and you say, I think some of my Amazon people are going to Walmart. I'd like to target those same people. And they say, no, you can't do that. And so now we have this series of these areas where the company knows everything, but they're not going to allow you to share it. And that's not fundamentally how the advertising ecosystem has worked. Previously, it was all open. You could track everything, and that allowed these larger marketing organizations to better figure out what was working and what wasn't working. And it was all done via cookies. But now they said, no, you can't do that anymore. So that's really has put a lot of organizations and kind of the blinds, if you will. And the tough thing for them, if we go back a couple of years ago, think about if you're a brand and you start selling on your website and then you say, I'm going to start advertising on TV, which is awesome. And now you get more and more sales starting to come in through your website. This is great. It's absolutely incredible. And then Amazon comes along. So now you start selling on Amazon. Well, the problem is that you're buying these TV ads and you had a whole formula to figure out how they were impacting your sales on your website. But now your sales on your website are going down and you think, well, maybe my TV isn't working as well. Maybe I should cut it down. And the reality is that's not the case. Your TV is reminding people to buy the product, and people in the US now go to Amazon. But the problem is trying to figure that out. Amazon's not going to communicate. They're not going to cooperate because they want you to buy their ads. They don't want you to buy TV. Platforms like ours at Provalytics were able to essentially pan that camera back and tell you that halo that TV is having on your marketplace buys like Amazon and Walmart. And then also the ads you buy on Amazon and Walmart, they actually drive some people back to your website. It's pretty wild how it all kind of works. But at the end of the day, this is one of those examples of where you're doing something for 6 months and then things change. This is a drastic shift to the overall ad ecosystem. And it's just now starting to shake out. And now, boom, AI is here. And now comes another shift. So who knows what it's going to be 6 months from now. But I can tell you that one of the things about the internet is that it is always changing, which is if you like to learn and you like change, it's a great place to be working.
So, given all your expertise here in digital marketing and tracking where the like everything from the direct effect of ads to the halo effect and the back and forth, right? That whole synergy that a system can create based on being visible in multiple platforms. And given that our audience who's listening is largely entrepreneurs, small business owners, who, for the most part, from what I've heard back in feedback, don't have an endless advertising budget. They're not trust fund babies. So, Jeff, what do they do? What's the best tip?
Well, the best tip, and this is my kind of DIY recommendation, is that every entrepreneur who's buying some ads has a Google sheet where they keep track of day over day, how much they've spent, what their cost per click is, their cost per sale or cost per lead, and they've got that all figured out. And that goes, and that is based upon kind of the fundamental understanding of how advertising works over the last 20 years, which is people invest money to buy clicks and clicks lead to sales or leads. But the reality is that that violates how marketing actually works. Advertising doesn't work that way. You don't buy clicks. We actually invest dollars to buy eyeballs. We buy attention. And that attention, when it builds up enough, it becomes awareness, and awareness builds over time. People will walk into our store. And if a store happens to be online, that's translated into clicks, and then that leads to leads and sales. So, what most entrepreneurs have been measuring has been the bottom part, the after effect of advertising. And so, as a result, when they go to optimize based upon that and they use that for decisioning, they end up cutting meta versus spending more money on Meta in that example earlier. So what I suggest is you take that Google sheet, go back over the last 12 months, download all those same reports, and include a column that you probably included, but you got rid of, called impressions. Impressions is the equivalent of eyeballs. It's the number of people you're trying to reach. And so you should have date, impressions, clicks, and then leads or sales or whatever. Then create a graph and graph it day over day, and then overlay on top of your impressions the clicks. And what you're going to see is that when impressions are high, it doesn't mean clicks will be high that day, but it will mean that over time the clicks will grow. And then there's a delay. That delay is that awareness time span. And there's a different delay for every marketing channel that you're actually in. So you want to be able to go back and analyze based upon those eyeballs. And when you find that relationship and that correlation, go back and do more of that. That's the stuff you want to do. So my recommendation for entrepreneurs who are not trust fund babies is focus on impressions, not on clicks. Clicks will lead you down the wrong path. It is the path, though, that Google wants you to go down because that's how they make money. Impressions are where you want to be.
Ooh, excellent. Jeff Greenfield, we're grateful you've been on our show. Where can people find you and Provalytics?
They can go to provalytics.com, or they can go to getprova, GETPROVA.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Last question. It is our signature question of the show. If we had the chance to peek into your closet, talk to us about that accessory that you wear, that clothing, that outfit, that pair of shoes or boots or something that just personifies who you are, Jeff Greenfield, and why that clothing item represents your personality, who you are, and all you do.
Ah, well, my closet is filled with about 25 beautiful custom made suits. And I love suits. They're the most, actually, they feel like pajamas. They're so damn comfortable. They're the best thing to wear. And I just, there's something nice about dressing up and going out on a date with my wife. And, my wife told me many years ago that a man in a suit is the equivalent of a woman in lingerie to a man. And I said, I think I love my suits. So definitely.
I love it. All right. With that, thank you so much, Jeff Greenfield, CEO of Provalytics, for being on our show.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And how about that fantastic intro by Touch Circle?